just do a little opening, do a little opening. Um, um, so uh, um, I have you guys heard me talk about a little bit about I don't know about a month, two ago or something like that. I'm not sure when exactly, but about my trip out to California and how um, I noticed a change within myself. And um, so change, I noticed that my desire for relationships, the desire for I've been having desire to have deeper and more meaningful relationships with people. And I'm no longer wanting a relationship with people. I'm wanting more of an intimate relationship with people. Well, when I say that, I say affectionate, I'm saying, you know, this the top the top of relationship where you never step on anybody's toes, you never say anything that may offend them. You're real nice. Um, that kind of relationship. The kind of relationship that you have with a coworker when you go to work, you everything's all on the surface. You're really cordial to them, respectful, and all this. And um, so I'm no longer wanting that kind of relationship with people. And this has caused a struggle with how I'm having a greater it's causing a struggle with trying to connect with people to the extent to one time I was talking to this guy and he got real upset with me and he said, "Why are you this? Why are you like?" And I said to him because I want a deeper relationship with you. And he didn't like I was picking on him, and I was kind of criticizing him. I was being really, I was challenging him. He didn't like it, and so as I thought about more about this, uh, the thought came to mind of how people view love is more when we view this when we view people view love as more of this affectionate, this real gentle, this real cordial and nice, this real surface. And um, so when we read the scriptures and said to love thy God with all thy heart or to love thy neighbor thyself, we're thinking of this gentle surface, affectionate type love. And really love's not quite like that at all. I won't say it all, but it's not quite like that. It's not in the context of the scriptures expressing what true love is. Um, so with my understanding and my desires beginning to change, I noticed that my relationship, my desires what I'm wanting out of my relationship with my spouse has changed too. I'm wanting something deeper. And I know that it causes a challenge in my relationship. And as long as I stay affectionate, things will kind of go smooth a little while until something happens, and when things begin to start to crack. And then when I start going, I start doing affectionate things, and then things start going smooth, and then a challenge hits, then when things begin to crack, and it is, and I no longer want it anymore. But it seems like the whole world, the relationships of the world are affectionate based, weak relationships. And because it's gentle, kind, surface type, feely things. And so we see the effect of it, no deep, meaningful relationships. So I want to stop right here.
Okay. Anybody have any comments on that? If not, Jalen, are you on?
Yeah.
Okay. The way I want everybody to keep in mind what Chris just said. But Jalen, I want you to try to talk about what we talked about yesterday, and the context of when you were talking about the demon versus angels. So the context, you don't have to go through the whole details, but you know what we landed on was language. So I'm just reminding you.
Yeah. Okay. So so how he was talking about affectionate relationships seeming are the way of the world, and you can have a nice time until you get to a challenge. And so we were talking about demons and angels, and the difference, that how the world views it is that there's a very big difference between a demon and an angel without having context to that. So intimate relationships is something that he's saying he's been trying to establish, not just in his home and not just at work, but in any relationship. And I've been reading a little bit in the Bible, and it started getting interesting how it doesn't really talk about Satan, Lucifer, demons, hell, like different things like that. That's not a big topic of it. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is angels are intimate. So they have I don't know how to start it. I would say, yeah, because okay, give me a sec. We had a very good talk yesterday, and it's a lot. So I'm trying to not start from the middle, but give the gist of it, and then allow Uncle Tracy to pull it all together. Demons have an animalistic behavior. So in terms of separation, so you have the different analogies and pictures of, okay, so a city set on a hill cannot be hid, and how a demon feels that they can supply all their needs, that they can be separate, that they can flourish in the world without having an intimate relationship and being intimately connected with the source. So I think it's in Ezekiel, but it talks about how there was, like, when he got the vision, it was a vision, I'm guessing, of an angel, that a messenger, a minister. And it talks about how it only moves when the spirit moves. And that was what I was seeing being a really big difference between what an actual angel and what a demon is. So we try to use affection, the affection base. So when you were talking about love, we try to use the cordiality as a means of if somebody's good or bad, if somebody's an angel or a demon. If you can be cordial, if you can have a nice work relationship, you don't ever get in trouble. You don't, you know what I mean? You're just a very hard worker. You go to work, go home, take care of your kids, go back to work, that type of thing. And basically what we landed on is that the separation is a delusion. The separation that no person is ever actually separated. It's a lack of vulnerability when the challenges arise. So in an intimate relationship with your provider, with the source, if there's something that is out of balance, out of not in standard, then it is our job to be able to challenge, be able to I'm really butchering this. I'm really butchering this.
Okay, so Jalen basically, I would ask everybody, was that confusing? Can't hear you, Randall.
Ask the question again. What did you just ask?
Was that confusing?
What he said.
Oh,
So what did you hear? What did you hear Jalen say? Now,
There's one.
listen, the object is Chris shared what his thoughts were, some of his thoughts that he was having this week. Jalen shared some thoughts that he was having this week and more closer to the end of the week. I think both of them probably had this more closer to the end of this week. Sabbath is really, we are all in the same event. We're all in the same event. And we might see that event differently, so to speak, but it's all the same event. So for instance, when Passover, I would say the feast day, when Passover happened, it was really a world event. It was not the children of Israel's event. It was a world event. And how they reacted to that event was differently. How they saw the event was differently, but it was a world event. And so, in essence, all of the feast days really have a world event effect. It's that the children of Israel understood that particular event to get the benefit out of it. So, as we talk about Sabbath, part of it is something that we're all in this same event and we're interpreting it or we're seeing it differently. So I'm asking to share what was as you went through this week, the challenges you went through the week, what did you see? What was brought to your mind? But yet we are all in that same event. And if you do it well enough, all of the events will connect and they will make sense. They will all connect. So this is the purpose of why I'm asking. All right, did that make sense? What Jalen said, and we'll start tying some of those things together.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm wanting to hear what everybody got to say. I've never thought about it like the Sabbath in the way that you explained it. It never crossed my mind.
Mhm.
Um,
One of the things that Jalen said that was challenging, that I want people to feel free to say, what in the hell were you talking about? Is he said that the demons and angels were the same. And y'all quiet.
Because it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me because
Now,
there's a
he basically put them in the same boat. There's no difference between demons and angels. Now, everybody know and don't think that way. We all say, wait a minute, an angel is this thing that has wings and it flies and, it's good. And when we say demon is bad, we understand. And Jalen also talked about a separation. Now, the purpose of this is to see if we can make a connection between what Chris said and what Jalen said. What do you all think?
So I guess so. He's helped me a little bit more. And I'll end it with this, and clear the floor again. So Ezekiel's message was to the children of Israel. It wasn't to quote unquote the world. Like, it gives us the detail that he was meant to go see the children of Israel. But later on, it also talks about how he's supposed to deliver a message to the wicked and the righteous. And if he doesn't do it to the wicked will die either way. If he gets the message from Ezekiel or not, he will die either way. But if he doesn't get the message from Ezekiel, it'll be the blood will be on Ezekiel's hand. And with the righteous man, the same thing, that it says that God laid a stumbling block in front of the righteous. And if Ezekiel doesn't do what he's supposed to show him his error, then the righteous man's blood will be on his hands as well. And so it for me, it wasn't, again, the zoomed in picture of only the children of Israel. It was more, as Uncle Tracy was saying, this is a world event. This is for everyone, even though it specifically is talking about this prophet going to the children of Israel.
So from what I heard Jalen say, and based on the connection that Uncle Tracy made, that we're all going through the same event. The only thing that separates is the delusion. The delusion being that God is the provider, or that in the Sabbath there is provision, or there is something to be gained or learned from the same challenges that we're all going through. But it's interesting. It's interesting though, because I think it was 2 weeks ago, Tracy challenged us young guys to come up with something. And when Micaiah and Jalen and I believe Chris was in there, in our separate meeting, we were discussing our week, and we all landed on the same topic based on a conversation Jalen had with Tracy, but we all perceived that topic differently, whether it be envy or covetousness.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? We gotta pick it up. We're moving a little bit too slow.
I had something happen this week, and it kind of ties in. And one of the challenges for me was wrestling with what direction to go. The house that we own next door, I've rented out to a young man, and I've been working with the young man since he's been over there. And one of the things that I told him was that there was a significance to him being in the house next door. This was not just a matter of I need a renter and you need a house to rent. I said, if somebody lands over here, it's going to be because there's something more significant than all of that. And so at this point, I had his undivided attention. And what I had told him was that what was going to happen was that I was going to find a time and a place to challenge him. I said, I don't have anything right now. There's nothing that I understand enough to be able to challenge. I said, but the challenge is coming. Well, one of the things that had happened was that when he would get paid, he would wait 3 or 4 days. And I had told him, I said, listen, when you get paid, it doesn't make me feel good for you to wait 3 or 4 days. I really, you get the money, you should be giving it to me. You're getting a discount rate. You should be giving it to me. And he agreed, and he followed through real nice the next couple of weeks. But then about a month ago, he got paid on Thursday. We went through the weekend. I wasn't seeing him at all on Sunday. Monday, Labor Day happens, and I still haven't seen him. So I've gone over there knocking on the door to chase my money. And he comes to the door kind of indisposed, and he just says, I'll catch up with you later. And so Tuesday comes, and I go over there, and I said, we really need to have a talk. And I said, I had kind of, stated that I really didn't want to chase my money. When you get the money, you should bring it to me. And I said, you got paid Thursday, and here it is Tuesday. And he says with a real flat disposition, oh, sorry, my bad. And then, well, we're getting ready to head out of town on Thursday. Well, he didn't have the money together by the time we left town. And when we left town, he said, hey, I'll just pay you, when you get back, and I'll have my second check by then, and I'll just pay you $1,500, which is, catching up. Well, when we get back, I don't hear from him. Not Saturday, not Sunday, not Monday. So I go Tuesday. I talked to him on Tuesday, and he still hasn't done anything. He said, well, since it's the end of the month, I can give you $750 and we'll be caught up. The guy has changed the terms of the deal. And I had a feeling it was going to come. And so I had just told him, I said, listen, I really never wanted to be a landlord. And I said, I don't want to be a landlord now. I said, you being there was for different terms. I said, at this point, what I want you to do is go ahead and just move out, because I don't want to be a landlord. I didn't go through much detail with him, but the significance of this is that he has bonded with me. I've bonded with him. When I said what I had to say, it was not affectionate, and I wasn't trying to play nice. I wasn't trying to be mean. I was just straightforward. This is, and I knew that I thought, well, this was the challenge. But I knew that his stay was going to be temporary. And I was wondering if the challenge was going to be for getting him out. And so when Chris talks about the relationship, I'm immediately identifying with what Chris is talking about, because what happens is that if I have an affectionate relationship, especially one where maybe I have, somewhat of a ability to be vulnerable, but I allow the other person to not be vulnerable at all. And that's where the affectionate part is coming in. It's not weight that's meant for me. I have a desire to see the young man do better. He's got a very ugly, traumatic past. The way he lives and everything is messed up. But I don't hold that against him. But nevertheless, here I am challenged with being absolutely honest with where I am. And so I am torn at this point between the two. Do I cater to the affectionate language, or do I stand on the framework of what just being honest looks like? I don't feel hurt. He feels hurt. I knew he was going to feel hurt. But I had that position this week. Do I cater to his hurt, or do I do what's most honorable, which is taking care of myself? I'm not meant to carry that man's weight like that. Regarding the language, demons and angels, some of the difficulties, the internal challenges that I had, I would have to say had something to do with demons. My form of getting affirmation is making everybody happy. I'm the comedian. I'm the entertainer. I'm the smart guy. Everything in me wants to make people happy. But now I have a different framework. That's my demon. I got it. There is a heavy duty match that either caters to a long time established system or one that actually has growth and provides coverage. That would be the angel. The angel would be a ministry of heading in the right direction. If I'm stepping in the wrong direction, the face of that thing no longer looks like an angel. There's a disruption that goes in the opposite direction. So I identify with the language that Jalen was talking about in those terms. That's something that I had put together in my mind for a bit. But I hope all of that made sense, but that's what I got.
Did him. Good job, Randall. Who wants to tag on to that?
I just want to say, Randall, I appreciate your comment. You really expressed what I was feeling, what I was trying to get at. And I like your explanation of demons and angels. That's kind of the same thing that I had in my mind. I really like the way you expressed it. Good job.
Thanks.
One of the things that Jalen, when he's using those terms, and Randall used the word, when he's using those terms, he is what I hate to use this word, but it's the only thing I can think of, is he is playing with language. When he starts talking about angels and demons and making them the same, different things like that, he is playing with language. But I feel like Randall did a good job. um, a part of it in my discussion with Jalen about that. I was really, when he first opened it up to me, I was really listening real intently, really trying to understand what is he talking about, because I know the views that most people have toward those things. And I would think, you know, you throw something out there like that with most people, they're not going to understand. They're not going to understand him. They're going to say, man, this is it, you know, we way off base on this one. But so I was really listening intently, and kind of sum it up. He is really, in essence, saying that there's two things that he was hitting on. One is that there's a thin line, and I think Randall kind of explained it a little bit, between the way that we use angel and the way that we use demon. We may not realize it, but he was bringing out that there's a thin line between the two. And this is what he said: affection, we're using the word here, affection and intimate. He said that independence is promoted in our world and in our society.
Mm.
And when you look at independence, people say that that's good. So let's say we classify people who are very independent. You know, we don't hate, but we can't stand people who are very dependent. We want them to get away from us. You know, you do yours, I do mine. You stay over there, I stay here. Those kind of things. And this is what Jalen is bringing out when he's talking affectionate, intimate relationship, affectionate relationship. This is the connection. So he's saying that he was groomed and he was raised to be very independent, so to speak. And you have your own thought, you have your own opinion. It's just as important as someone else's. This is how our society looks at things. But and when we look at those people, we say, those people are doing well. They can stand on their own 2 feet. They don't have to rely on anybody. All of those things, that's the angel. And when we see somebody that is not in the negative, dependent, the real word is interdependent. We have a tendency to say and deal with them as they are the demon. But when we talk about an intimate relationship, or you talk about the kingdom of heaven, we are talking about something that is a nucleus of people, an intimate relationship where each party has something to give and something to share and a contribution. America shies away from that idea. We have a tendency, I didn't have in mind to say all of these things, but over the years, do you know that during the time that John F. Kennedy was president, he was so infatuated, if that is not the right word, sorry, with communism. Now, I'm not a communist. And back at the time, they would say that if you were doing something that was not in order, like they thought, they would nab you with being a communist. And when they did that, you were ostracized or looked at as being, whoa, stay away from him. He's a demon. But the idea of communism, I am not supporting communism. The idea of communism had more of a picture of a collective group, a collective thing working together. What had been taught over the years in it, which I think there's something to it, was that it was government control, just like we do with socialism. I'm just giving information right now. But the point that I'm making in that is how we look at collective effort, how we look at working together, and how society looks at those things is that is the demon.
Mm-hmm.
That's the demon. And the way that we look at someone who is self-sufficient, so to speak, can stand on his own 2 feet, don't need anything from anybody, we look at them as being very angelic. But the one that is interdependent, in order to be that, you have to be intimate. And if you are independent, in order to be that, you have to be affectionate. Very, very affectionate. And so I'm just giving a little overview, and then I have something to add to that. I'm just giving a little bit of what Jalen was saying. And he was really talking about the second part that he was talking to me about during the week was that he started recognizing again that the language between, if you were to, for a lack of expression for those who listening, if you were to compare Greek to Hebrew, and the way that the Hebrew says it and the way that the Greek says it is 2 different things. They're really 2 different ways. But at the same time, the way that we hear is when we hear the Hebrew and we dilute it to a static sound, it's meant to be dynamic, very active, very aggressive, very strong. Listen to what I'm saying and connect it to what everybody is saying. An intimate relationship is not a passive relationship. It is an aggressive relationship. It does not accept, I don't want to say differences. I want to say how we do in our society, how we look at opinions, how we do that. This is my opinion. That's your opinion. You stay over there and you have your own belief and I have mine. How much is that connected to being independent? And we value that. Well, in the Hebrew, it does not leave room for opinion. Not the way that we use the word opinion today. In the Hebrew, it is that we stand together and we wrestle till we all see the same thing. One. That's in the Hebrew. It doesn't leave room for you to stay over here with your thought, a different, I want, again, opinion. And I stay over here in opinion. It never stops. I will share this for those who might watch it on YouTube. Really, in language, an opinion is really, really the depths of what a real opinion is nothing other than a personal preference or a personal like or dislike. It never really has anything to do with right or wrong. That sky outside is blue. Well, that's your opinion. I think that it is this. That is where we live today, and we separate on those type of ideas into independence. What Jalen is partially talking about, the second part is, what Jalen is talking about is the language of Hebrew, the language of collective, the language of wrestling till we all see one, because that is an intimate relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And so even when you said that, right? When you talk about wrestling, how we tried to separate it is we say Jacob wrestled with an angel. We don't say Israel wrestled with an angel. We always take one. So we'll say Moses did this. We'll take archetypes from the Bible and try to pull them apart, where it's like the appearance is the biggest thing for a quote unquote demon. The appearance of a demon is always one that will look good. While as when you talk about the Hebrew being more aggressive, why I feel God has never cared about his appearance. He's never arraigned himself and, you know, put him as the capital, the chief thing in a negative sense of it's all about me. It's the interdependent sense of I need you as much as you need me. Like so you're bringing back up some of what we talked about. And so just for an example would be when Jesus was on earth, there was a demon that asked him, you know, hey, why are you here? You're here before your time. Like, are you here to torment? Where it's when you're independent, it's your opinion that, you know, this is a one-time thing. So are you here before your time? And you miss the point that starts in the Torah in the beginning that I am always with you. You miss the collective part of I am always here. And you start seeing it negatively. And the appearance is the biggest thing that, that you're talking about, that it's never been about the appearance. It's always been about the spirit. And that is what gives you that's what clothes you. That's what actually allows you to have authority and be intimate.
I'll jump in here. And from what I'm hearing everyone talk about with the intimacy, and it kept bringing to mind, I kept hearing, love your neighbor. Love your neighbor is one of our commandments. And you can't love your neighbor and fear your neighbor. You can't be intimate with your neighbor and fear your neighbor. I keep seeing that there's an underlying root of fear within the lack of intimacy that we see in the world. What we talk about is being aggressive with someone that you're intimate with. The only thing that would prevent you from being totally open, honest, and as raw as you can be is fear. And maybe this is going another direction, but I've for a while now been seeing that there's this underlying tone within our culture and our language that we're trained to fear our neighbor. You have to fear your neighbor. Your neighbors are bad. You can't trust your neighbor. This leads into, well, you need government to protect you from your neighbor. You have to vote to protect, that way your rights are protected from your neighbor. Everything in the language that of our culture teaches us to fear our nature or our neighbor, even though they're saying love your neighbor. But what happens that I've seen in religion is that they have this love your neighbor tone, language, but it's still coming from a condescending point of view. You're loving your poor, pathetic neighbor that you should be scared of, that you can't trust. And it's not really love, because when you talk about love your neighbor and love and the kind of intimacy that we're dealing with, you have to be open and vulnerable to your neighbor. You can't fear them, not one bit at all. And to share like my week thing, which I'm not sure if it really ties into you guys' week, like we're saying, I had a challenge with my landlord, and it's kind of been an ongoing challenge with the cost of rent and the house that I'm being provided with, and I don't feel that his cost of rent is justified. And I finally kind of brought myself to the point of laying all my cards on the table, and I was very raw, business-like with them, but still I felt very intimate and vulnerable with them. And I told him where I was at. I said, look, if you want me to stay long-term, I can't do it at the cost of rent that you're giving. I was like, and stay longer. If it's over that certain amount, I just can't do it. And he actually came back and agreed with my amount, lowered rent by $300 a month, which is a significant amount. But there's been a lot of these instances where I've been just laying my cards on the table. It's very not, I don't want to say unloving, but it's non-emotional. You know, I'm not viewing things as good or bad or anything like that. And to me, it's about honoring and respecting the person that you're dealing with, but still being vulnerable enough to express your grievance as you feel it. And it seems to me that that produces good results. And part of my challenge that I have to go through every time in this is to not fear my neighbor, not fear my landlord, not fear the people around me, so that I can be just as open and pure as I can possibly be. And that's kind of where I've been, what I'm hearing and where I'm at with this topic.
Chad, one of the things that you said, I think I want to make sure I'm correct on it. You said something about, or you related to not trusting, not you not trusting, but you know, you mentioned the word trust, and then it seemed like you said something about demon. So it was like I can't remember how you said it, but connecting the two. And so are you familiar with what I'm talking about? Not really. I didn't give you notice. Okay.
Not really.
So in short, what came to my mind is, it brings up a good point. What came to my mind is when you say a very good point, when a person loses trust, when they don't have trust, you went through the scenario talking about your neighbor, all of that. It was during that part, and then right when you were talking about that, I got a picture of us not trusting each other, us not trusting our neighbor, us not being able to have a trust. And so through that is where really demon applies. We don't know, our society does not emphasize or teach how unhealthy a person is without trust. I've said before, you can't judge correctly if you don't trust, if you lose trust. So it's a very, very powerful thing. When you lose it and you don't have it, that's when if you were to relate to demon, that's really when it starts really happening and coming in.
Okay.
Which brings up another point, the part that I wanted to bring in as Jalen and I were talking, it brought a scripture to my mind. And I'm getting a lot of back every time I talk, it feeds back. Are you all getting that?
No.
Yeah, so it's annoying, and it's hard to talk through it. So in short,
Why doesn't
anyway,
there?
Jill and I were talking, and I came across the scripture, so I want to tie this into it. It brought a scripture to my mind. I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about maybe some of the events that I ran into. The passage that I want to read, and I'm going to read the passage, the verse, and then I'm going to go back up to the top so you can get a little context. And it says, what verse I want to start? I'm going to just start 19. Matthew 16:19. And I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And so I'm going to read. It says, when Jesus came into the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? And they said, some say that thou art John the Baptist, some Elias, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He says unto them, but whom say you that I am? And Peter answered and said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered and said unto him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood hath not revealed this unto you, but my Father which is in heaven. And I say unto you that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And I will give unto you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever you shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever you shall loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. What in the world is this talking about? Having ability to bind and loose things. But one of the things that I want to mention in this verse is what's stuck into my mind is keys. I keep in mind, we're talking about intimate relationship, affectionate relationships. Can a person trust? If they lose trust, can they have an intimate relationship? Do they have the ability to have an intimate relationship without trust? Or would they be affectionately connected to something? So keep in mind the verses that are read. Now, I'm mixing it up real good for you, and then you all will put it together. I was speaking to someone the other day. I had two sessions where I was doing a little bit of counseling, and the same topic came up in both sessions. And so I had a dilemma. Part of the dilemma was I have been saying to someone that they needed to be vulnerable. They really needed to be vulnerable. And the person was feeling like I am vulnerable. I have done that. I'm doing all that I can. I don't know what it means, you know, all of those. I keep on trying. I open myself up and all of that. And, you know, I shared that it meant to be naked, totally naked, vulnerable. And so the person gave me examples of I try to approach things like this and very vulnerable, very open. And so I said, oh, I'm starting to understand that it's hard to comprehend. And I didn't want to give any examples because I felt like if I gave examples of being vulnerable, they would make that the law. They would hear it and say, this is okay, this is the way you do it. And I did that, I tried it, and it didn't work or whatever. And so I was saying, I told him I don't want to give any examples because it's much broader than the examples that I could give. Hopefully you're following me. And so then my next session, the how to express vulnerable came to me in the next session. And as I was explaining something in the next session, I said to a couple, it was one particular person in this relationship. It's two people, it's a couple, husband and wife. And I'm not giving all of the details, but I said, have they given you, I said, okay, they have a Rolls Royce. And have they given you the keys to that Rolls Royce and said it's yours here? These are your keys. Now, I just read, I give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. All right. So I said, have they given you the keys to the Rolls Royce? And took their hands off and said, now you drive it. You do whatever you want to do with it. I am giving this to you. And they said, no, I've never had that. Very interesting. I wish I could really, really go to the details or through it because you all would find this very interesting if I could. They said, I've never had that in this relationship. What I was dealing with was after a wrong had been committed or a trespass, this is the best way to say it, had been committed and trust was lost in the relationship. In order to reestablish an intimate relationship and to rebuild trust, the only way to do it is to give that person that you have done the trespass to the keys. It's the only way to reestablish trust. It's to give them the keys. And so when I said that, it came to me, aha. This person has been given the keys. Now, let's go back to that scripture. What does, when God said, and I give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatsoever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Think about the whole story, the whole context of what I read. If you need to read it again, read it. What is the purpose and what does it indicate for God to give the keys? Think about the story. Why did God give the keys? What did it mean? And if we can establish what it means, we might be able to understand what he means by bind and loose.
I have a connecting verse to that verse from 2 Peter 1, which I believe in my knowledge directly connects to those keys specifically. Starting with verse 3. According to his divine power hath given unto us all things that pertain unto life and godliness through the knowledge of him that hath called us to glory and virtue. And here's the key part, whereby are given unto us exceeding and great and precious promises, that by these, the promises, ye might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. And from what I'm seeing is that the promises of God directly relate to trusting God, and trusting God directly relates to being vulnerable. In order,
Go ahead.
okay, in order to be a person who makes themselves vulnerable, to hand someone else the keys to your Rolls Royce, you have to have a trust in God behind you, supporting you, backing you up, to have that trust to give someone the keys. And it's because of the promises we have that we hold on to, which you can go write a book about all the promises and all that, but it's only through holding on to the promises of God that we can really have the trust we need to become completely vulnerable.
I would agree, Chad. Let me read this and see if we can get into it a little deeper. It says, he saith unto them, but whom say ye that I am? Now, he first asked a question. So I'm gonna explain a little bit here. He first asked the question, who do people say that I am? And they answered, some say that thou art John the Baptist, some Elias, and others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. Is what this indicating is that people had an affectionate look, that they really only had an outside appearance of who he was? Does it indicate that? Okay. Now, it says, but whom say ye that I am? Very interesting. And Simon Peter answered and said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Now, look, we reading. That stuff don't make no sense to nobody. What is the Christ? Just another man. Very interesting. Read on to the next part. And Jesus answered and said unto him, blessed art you, Simon Barjona, for flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto you, but my Father which is in heaven. That last part, but my Father which is in heaven, sticks out very strong in my mind. Now, he said, my Father helped you to understand who I was, that I am the Christ. We're playing with language now. We're playing with language. I want you to get out of your head or your normal way of thinking. We're playing with language. My Father helped you to understand that I am the anointed. My father did it. Can anybody tell me how his father did it? And I'll give you a part of, we're talking about an intimate relationship now. An intimate relationship. How did his father help Peter to understand that he didn't have this same affectionate view or an opinionated view of who Jesus was? Jesus basically told him, this is how you understood that I am not just this simple. This is something revealed it to you. Is what he said. Something revealed it. How did he, what did he, and what happened? I'll give you a clue. The word is in heaven. My Father, which is in heaven, revealed this to you. Talk about Sabbath now. Real Sabbath. I want y'all to understand what Sabbath is.
Said it's everybody experiencing the same event. And so how I see it is almost what Chad was talking about when he was talking about having to have a foundation or a support system. So when you talk about in heaven, he said it was revealed to you because you're understanding who your provider is. That's how you know who I am. And the others weren't understanding that. Is that?
Did you finish?
I think so. I don't know.
Oh, I didn't. It sounded like you were going to say more. I think you're on track. It's not fully complete. Go ahead, Randall.
There's a word that jumps out in my mind, and the word is transition. 1 minute, somebody does not have the keys, and the next minute, somebody has the keys. What is the active part in that transition? So the one thing that I feel like is maybe a silent point is, how did Peter arrive at that conclusion? Well, my understanding of the framework was, at some point, Peter must have experienced some kind of challenge to where, let's just say, all of his ideals of who the Christ was, ultimately, I guess, and Peter's personality is fired up. He's fast. He's fast on his feet. But now, all of a sudden, Peter has gone through a challenge to where there's nothing that he could come up with that would suffice as a good answer. And at the moment that Peter acknowledges that he does not have the answer, this is when the Father who is in heaven has provided for him. In that initial act of sacrifice, where Peter relinquishes his own ideals and becomes provided for with a new ideal, which is the true nature of what the Christ is, at that moment, there's a bond that seems that can't be relinquished. Peter may not have all the answers for everything he's going to experience, but when he has the keys, he will be able to judge. He will be able. So when you're talking about binding and loosening things, it sounds to me like the job of a judge. That qualification process, transitioning from not having the keys to having the keys, was seen in suffering and sacrifice.
So I have a question.
So hold on.
I have a question.
Just a minute. Okay, hold on. So Randall, did a part of what Randall explained was the answer as far as he understood through the challenges. That is how he understood who he was. Anyway, go ahead, Brian.
Thank you for that. What I'm trying to do is connect the dots from the example that you used as far as intimate couple and intimate relationship, and how to in the event of a trespass. You talked about in the event of a trespass, keys have to be handed over so that that trust can be reestablished in the relationship. And so based off of what we're talking about, as far as God granting the keys to Peter, I'm trying to make that connection, but I'm not 100% clear. But I do see where where Randall is coming from, because of the way that he puts it out there. I can see it happening in my own like personal experience.
Okay, yes. Where we are actually approaching that, Brian. So we built this challenge, this thought, and we're slowly approaching the answer to that to where it is clear. And so Randall just gave a piece of the puzzle. When he starts, we have not, where I have not even fully gotten into keys, because that's where it connects with what you're asking. I said to someone that in order to reestablish trust, that you have to give that person the keys. The question is, you are given, what does it mean to give someone the keys? What does it mean? It signifies authority. So if I give someone the keys to the car, they have authority. Is that not correct? Can you see that?
Yeah.
If I, Brian, am the car, I'm not saying just the car, but if Brian is the car and I give my wife the right and the keys to this car, there's the only way to reestablish a broken relationship. The only way to restore or bring restitution when there has been certain wrongs, deep wrongs, hurtful wrongs, the only way. And so what I asked that person, I said, did they ever give you the keys? Ever since from the time you got married, didn't anybody ever give you the keys? It never happened. Now we can see that our relationship is strained, that it doesn't have trust. We don't have a trusting relationship. And over a period of time, it will divide, it will break. Because it's required that every man gives the keys. Does that make sense? Okay.
That makes sense.
So why does God give the keys? Does it denote that I trust Does it denote that I'm giving you something very powerful, very useful? Why? But the important part is to understand that David went through something that qualified him to have it. Other than that, if he had never gone through those challenges, he would have had an affectionate outlook on things. And he would have addressed the surface of problems rather than the inner part of problems. See, when Jesus said, "Whom do you say that I am?" What Peter revealed was that I understood the depths. I did not just see the surface like the rest of the men saw. How did I get there? How did I understand it? The only way that I can have this depth of understanding is if I go through challenge. And everybody that fails to go through challenge, because when you say heaven and you say the kingdom of heaven, it is a thing, is interesting because it starts with the wilderness. It starts with the wilderness experience. That's the kingdom. It was a place where God dwelled. And the challenges that the children of Israel see, you can't have a real revelation without those challenges. And your relationship with a person, with your wife, with your kids, if you don't have those challenges, I guarantee you, you cannot have an intimate relationship. It is those challenges that bring us to an intimate relationship with each other. It's the things that we suffer that binds us together, not money. And those things that we suffer, that's a Sabbath experience. We're all in the same event. Brian, you are not just, it's not just Brian over here by himself and his worries and his problems, and he's going through an event. Your event is my event. We are going through, all of us are going through an event, but it is through that we can only see one. It's through the event that we learn to see and we learn to hear the same. It's through the event. There's no form of unity. What happened when you had communism is trying to build something without the challenges, bringing you to this state. That's what communism is. That I see the picture of how to be, what I say to people, you can look at a building or you can look at the temple and you can say, I can build it exactly like that from the eye. But you might not have all the same nails, the same material that was given in the details in the Old Testament. You don't have it. What I'm saying is, if you do not go through those challenges, how you will look at life and how you understand life will be from an affectionate point of view. It'll be from an opinionated point of view and not from a truth point of view, because all truth must go through challenge to establish what it is. Do we understand?
And I would say what you said is a very difficult pill for me to swallow in terms of my own challenges and how my mind has been working with this big divide of what's right and wrong. It's really hard to like address that part, or at least that part, the side that I'm having trouble with the nuances of what's right and wrong, and having to directly challenge my whole judgment on what's right, what's wrong, and the fine line between that really it's something that I find I can't even go in, I can't even touch that.
Chris, part of what you just said, very interesting to me and very good. The part that I tried to put together was the part where you said trying to understand, I forgot what word you used, from right or wrong. And the way that I would explain it is that we all have different views in life. But until those views are challenged, until those things, not just views, until you go through a proving process or a purging process, those views are not dynamic. So as you go through the process, as you go through the challenges, that is what makes, and then your words have authority. But it's through the challenges that you must go through. That is why Jesus asked the question, whom do you say that I am? To see if they understood, because if they understood, it automatically meant that they went through the challenge.
And something that I've been getting throughout my time thinking about this challenge that I've experiencing with the whole light and dark is that one answer that I keep on seeing as like a reoccurring thing, that is something that's dark isn't necessarily bad. That's the answer I keep on getting, that just because this person says this is dark, this is evil, and you don't touch that, doesn't mean that it's actually bad. It's more of, it's not like it's inherently bad or this is inherently good. They're more like they're things. They're like, there's a distinction in between, but it's more dependent on the user, or the, I guess, the mindset. If someone perceives this as being bad, but that person, I don't know how to really explain that, but
So go ahead.
I guess I would explain it as to somebody who has, of, I guess, the right mindset, doing something that is perceived as evil isn't evil, because I guess the mindset.
Two things. When you say that, what the question that I would have is, who set the standard? Because what happens is, where the confusion comes in at is, if a particular nation, any nation, says we are it and we become a standard, we are the standard, but they were not meant, but that's not really the standard. So if you move over here to America, they have a certain standard of life. But that standard is far beneath the real standard. They say, oh, this is bad, according to their standard. You believe that, then you will carry the weights of that country. Did that make sense?
Yes.
If you are of the kingdom of heaven, and its standards, then you carry the weight of that country. They're two different countries.
Mhm.
And so what has happened is this is structured in the Bible when it talks about God, and no man can serve God and mammon and different things. That word mammon is when it's doing those things, it's saying, look, there's a kingdom over here and there's a kingdom over here. If you live in this kingdom, you're subject to the laws of that kingdom. What it says is bad, you have to live according to what they say is bad. What they say is good, you have to live according to what they say is good. But if you live in this kingdom, there are laws that go along with this kingdom, the kingdom of heaven. And the things in this kingdom is light. And it says, this is how it is. And you're either subject to the laws of either one. That's what we're talking about. If you're in an affectionate relationship, if you lose trust, you are automatically in this kingdom over here, the kingdom of mammon. If you have trust and you have an established trust, remember when Jalen was talking about demon, if you say demon, that exists in the kingdom of heaven, mammon. It does not exist in the kingdom of heaven. Did that make sense?
Kind of.
There's-
Yeah.
There's one thing that keeps jumping out at me, and it's something that I had told Michael a while back, and I don't know if this actually connects or not. So either way, it's okay. But I told him that it wasn't the things that you do that determine what's good or bad, but it's what's behind it. The way I put things together to make a living according to the world's standard is absolutely good. And on the surface, it looks good. But whenever you see that my mode of operation has not had any vulnerability, and that almost everything that I did was based on an insecurity or a fear of not being provided for, then the thing I'm doing is not really all that good. And it's the same way with things that look like a deficiency. It looks like it's bad, but when you understand what's behind it, you can actually see the good in it. And I don't know if that helps connect anything, but anyway, that's what y'all's conversation made me think.
Right.
That's very
Chris.
interesting. That's a very interesting conversation. I don't know where it all began, but I was trying to share what I want in my heart. Something that came to my mind about clarity. We talked about Peter being revealed, the kingdom of heaven, or revealed who the Messiah was. Clarity only comes from a contrast. And I'll give an example. If you have a fuel tank and if you don't know the capacity of the fuel tank, how do you know how much is a quarter of a tank of fuel? To know what a quarter of a tank of fuel is, for that fuel tank, you first have to know what the capacity is. So if it's a 26-gallon tank, it's going to take so many. If it's a 10-gallon tank, it's going to take so many gallons. In all things that we measure in life, you have to know the capacity to measurement, whether it's baking, whether it's getting fuel in a car, or whether it's eating. We have to know the capacity. The standard sets the capacity for me to gauge myself on. If I don't have a standard, then I cannot correctly gauge where I'm at in this journey of life. So all clarity comes from a contrast. So when I think of Peter, we talked about challenges, and I want to use the word judgment. I'm using it in the sense of challenge, the same way Randall Trace is using it. The word love is a picture of a lineman, which is a staff, and a text, which is a picture of a tent. So you got a staff and a tent. This is what love is. So when it says to love thy God with all your heart, it's not talking about affection. The staff represents authority, as the staff was also used to goad sheep as you're directing the sheep somewhere, at a certain direction. So if the sheep begins to steer from the path, you take the little staff and you tap them on the side. Get back in line. Get back in line. It was used to direct a sheep to a certain path, on a certain pathway. When you think of the word tent, a tent is something that stores something. So when the scripture is talking about love, it's talking about something that's been stored in the heart of a man. This sets a standard when it's stored in the heart. When I open myself up for challenge, I am storing something within my heart that brings clarity. So when you look at this, the scripture says for you to love, to honor your neighbor, or something like that, and to honor neighbor as thyself. When you judgment or the challenges, and God present, and it creates to honor, it is referring to that you lay judgment on your neighbor. Anything that's less than the standard, that you take that same thing which you got and you give it to your neighbor. You lay judgment on him. If you remove the challenges that is supposed to develop a relationship. We have a bunch of relationships that are affectionate, and affectionate relationships look like a sounding brass, tinkling cymbal, something hollow, with no strength, nothing, just a emptiness, a form. The only way that we can develop an intimate relationship, as Randall said, as Tracy said, we have to embrace the challenge and allow the challenge to be stored in our heart. So when you read in Genesis, in the sixth day was the creation of man. But when you read from day 1 to day 6, you see challenges that created this man. And where you read that at is when it says evening in the morning was the first day, evening in the morning was the second day, on and on and on. He's just talking about challenges, contrasts that was placed in the heart, and these things grew, and it created a new creation, a new man. The purpose of Israel, of those who've gone through this challenge, is to set a standard. But in this standard, when you set a standard, when you lay judgment, or you pose a challenge to those who are on an affectionate state, what tends to happen, they don't like it and they want to attack you because of the standard that you set. This is where the scripture says is kind, charity, if believe is all things, hope is all things. When they begin to attack you because of the standards you set, because you desire an affectionate relationship, they begin to attack you. This is really representing the one who is authority, the leader. You're attacking me because I set a standard. But this is the only way, because the scripture says this is the salvation of the world, the healing of the nations. And this is the only way. We have to move from an affectionate state to an intimate state. And it's the only way.
Good stuff, Chris.
Yeah, that was some of the connecting points I was hearing were, again, the story of Adam and Eve, how we look at that as the reason why we sin today, instead of understanding what you were saying, that challenge is the reason that we don't have to sin, if that makes sense. That my spirit will not always strive with man. That key that was given at the beginning, whenever it looked like there was an appearance of disorder. And so how you were even talking about from day 1 to day 6, the evening or the morning to the evening, and how that is what created man. It was very interesting how you were saying that.
Mm-hmm. Ryan, you saying something?
No, I wasn't, but I was thinking something.
Right.
But I was just thinking about a little bit to what Shane was saying, as far as, like, you know, trying to navigate what's right and wrong. And I mean, the thing that popped into my head is the sooner that you recognize that you've been lied to pretty much all your life, that helps.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Wow.
I know what you're saying, Brian. I know what you're saying.
Hey, I have a response to Chris Jr. in what he said. Something that he said really stuck out to me in the part about darkness not being bad. And to me, that really made a lot of sense in the idea of light and darkness. And here's something that I'll challenge Chris to think about. And I'll ask you, does darkness have any power and authority? And I would say that it does not, because the only substance is light. And when you view light and darkness, there's only light, and darkness is an absence of that light. And so darkness it's not an evil, bad thing because it's a void. It's just absence of the light. And the light is the only actual substance. And when we talk about this kingdom mindset, the keys to heaven, being vulnerable, I really believe that it's connected to this mindset of not looking at things as good and evil, as though you have two things, but only looking at what is good. Evil is less than good, but good is the substance. If you're always trying to put things into a two duality system, a two-fold system, you're always going to be divided. Whereas when you're looking at, well, this is good, this was less than good. This was perfect good, this was short of that perfect good. It really helps to start to connect your thinking, the way you see things, and to me, the way God sees things. God doesn't view things in a realm of good and evil. He views things as good. There's only good. And to me, that standard of only seeing one singular pathway is part of the kingdom of heaven. Part of what will change your behavior patterns, your responses to things, and all of it, really. And I think that part of what religion in this world does is pose us to grow up with the view of duality, of good and evil, that we're constantly looking at evil. Is that good or is that evil? And we're putting it in these groups. But when you come out of that thinking and you're like, okay, I only see good and less than good, you're always focused and posed to go to good. And I connect this also with agreement. And I've posted about this, talked about this before, but there's two different mindsets, right? And you could say angels and demons. Angels know that the only conclusion to every relationship is agreement. Demons believe that you can conclude with agreement or you can conclude with disagreement. When you conclude with disagreement, that would represent war and divorce. That's why you have war and divorce, because people said, well, we're going to conclude with disagreement. However, according to God and the way God views everything in life, disagreement is not a conclusion. It's a temporary stall until agreement is reached. If you view your marriage, your children, your friendships as though, okay, the only conclusion we can have to the end of this is agreement, and that's the only thing you're pushing for, you can't really fall into a conclusion of disagreement or divorce. And I think that these are two mindsets. These are the ones, the world's mindset of two and God's mindset of one. And the more and more you start seeing only one, the more you're going to be able to respond to the things in life.
And
Good stuff, Chad. That's a
Yeah.
bullseye. Go ahead, Chris, if you want to say something.
yeah, that helped clear up a lot on what I was thinking, but it also had brought up to the question of, okay, then what about, I would say, what about the commandments? Because the commandments say, do not do this. And at least in the topic of thou shalt not kill. And that whole, so there's that. And the another thing that what you said, Chad, at the beginning was what I was trying to like get toward, is that the whole sense of that the darkness isn't necessarily evil. It's more of something like a tool, and it's dependent on, I guess, the wielder over if what he does with this tool is deemed to be good or bad. And with how you framed it as there's only good, and then there's only the varying degrees of good, helps a lot, because like it's like how you kind of explained it is like there's no good or bad. It's just there's only the standard, and then there's the stuff that's not meeting the standard.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, I have a little, I agree with Chad, but I have a different angle. Instead of using the word evil, I'm going to use the word disruption.
Mm-hmm.
When something happens that is disruptive, there is a sense of the standard that we've inherited that says disruption is evil. And so we start making provisions to avoid it. But if we see disruption as not as evil, but as an opportunity, then you are prepared for the challenge. If you say the disruption is evil, then there's a sense that you have judged this doesn't belong to you. So that word evil can really misdirect the true nature of these things that are disruptive and what their function is as far as getting us aligned. It's, to me, whenever I have something that's really messed up, I look at it as an opportunity to either get aligned myself or to respond to the challenge in such a way that somebody else might be aligned.
Mm.
Good stuff.
So
To add just a little bit to that as well, if God is the judge, the thing that keeps us from seeing that we have been assessed and properly prescribed the challenges that we need to grow is delusion. And so anything less than standard is delusion or an illusion. So if we are being given an assessment and a prescription, if God is the judge and God is our provider, then there is nothing that we cannot handle. In other words, every challenge that is given to us is exactly what we need to grow.
Good. Great conclusion.
Excellent.
So it sounds like it's some semblance of like a balancing act. At least that's what I drew from it. It's like something kind of resemblance of a balancing act, not I don't know how to explain that, but yeah, it's like a balancing act. You don't want to have too much of one or of the other, because if you do, you come up with confusion, you get confused, and you get messed up. And it's to say that there's like come up with if something happens to you and you view it as a bad thing, there's a sense of you miss what that thing was supposed to be intended for. You're gonna miss something if you just come out and say, well, I had a car accident, and that wasn't good, and yeah, I really wish I should try to avoid that, rather than looking at it the other way of what was the purpose of that. I had a car accident. What is that supposed to mean? I guess the meaning, or I guess, well, with lack of a better word, the optimistic way of looking at things happening to you or things that you experience.
Hey, I have a
Teacher,
question.
teacher, pick me.
Hey, what are you thinking, Brian?
Somebody just mentioned car accident. Somebody just mentioned changing your life. But we get into that. I don't want to keep you all night. So go ahead, Brother Randall.
Man, it's funny. I can't even remember what I was going to say now. The question. Geez, I had a question. Perhaps it had to do with Chris. You inspired a question out of me. Could you say that in order to put that disruption, that thing that appears to be evil, in order to understand that from a neutral place, would you say that that is a type of dying?
Can you repeat the question?
If you see the thing that's biting your ass, the clunky box, the episode, the disruption, if you see that, if you're able